I woke up one morning to find strangers parking their cars on my farm because Karen told the entire HOA my land was their community car park, and nobody thought to ask me first. What she never counted on was that the power lines feeding every single home in this neighborhood run straight through my property. So who exactly has the upper hand here? I remember the exact sound my boots made on the gravel that morning. A slow, steady crunch. The kind that only happens when everything is still and the world hasn't started throwing things at you yet. I had just finished feeding the chickens. My farm, Ridgeline Acres, sits on 11 acres of land that my grandfather bought before this whole neighborhood even existed. The houses, the streetlights, the cul-de-sacs with their matching mailboxes. All of that came after. My land was here first. That matters. Remember that. I was walking back toward the barn when I noticed it. A car, a silver sedan parked right in the middle of my lower field, the one I use for rotating crops. The driver was gone. Just the car, sitting there like it belonged, like someone had simply decided that my grass was pavement. I stood there for a second, blinking. I thought maybe someone had broken down. Maybe a teenager had taken a wrong turn. I told myself there was a simple explanation because I'm the kind of person who always looks for the simple explanation first. Then a second car pulled in. It rolled right past my fence post, the post I had repainted white just 2 weeks ago, and parked next to the sedan. A woman stepped out in a yellow cardigan, grabbed a reusable shopping bag from her back seat, and started walking toward the neighborhood entrance like she had done this 100 times before. I called out, "Excuse me. Hey, excuse me, this is private property." She turned around, looked at me the way someone looks at a stranger who just interrupted a very important phone call, and said, "The HOA designated this area for overflow parking. It's on the community map." I felt something cold settle into my chest. Not anger, not yet. More like the specific kind of confusion you get when someone tells you something so wrong that your brain takes a moment just to process it. "This is my farm," I said. She shrugged. Actually shrugged. "You should take that up with Karen." And there it was. The name I had heard exactly twice before. Once at a neighborhood meeting I had attended out of politeness, and once on a letter that had been slipped under my door complaining about the smell from my compost pile. Karen Hollis, HOA president, self-appointed community architect, and apparently the woman who had decided that my 11 acres of inherited farmland was a parking lot. I didn't yell. I didn't block the second car from parking. I walked back to my house, sat down at my kitchen table, and opened my laptop. Here is something people don't know about me. I am not a loud person. I don't make scenes. I don't knock on doors with my voice raised. But I am extremely, almost uncomfortably thorough when I feel like something isn't right. My grandmother used to call it quite stubborn. She meant it as a compliment. The first thing I pulled up was the HOA community map, the actual one, the one filed with the county. I had downloaded it when I first moved back to Ridgeline 3 years ago, right after my grandfather passed and left me the property. I had read every line. Old habit. I found the overflow parking designation within 4 minutes. It was listed as Parcel 7C. I cross-referenced it with my property deed. Parcel 7C, according to every legal document that existed, was mine. It has been mine since 1987 when my grandfather paid for it in full. There was no easement. There was no shared use agreement. There was no clause, no footnote, no asterisk. Karen had put a parking lot on my land without ever asking me, without ever contacting me, and apparently without ever looking at a single legal document. I leaned back in my chair and looked out the window toward the lower field. 3 cars now. A fourth was pulling in. I want to pause here for a second, because I need you to understand something about the layout of this property. Something that I hadn't fully thought about yet that morning, but that would matter enormously in the days ahead. Running along the eastern edge of Ridgeline Acres is an infrastructure corridor, power lines, the kind that feeds the entire east side of the neighborhood. The utility company has a maintenance easement on that strip, but the land itself, still mine, always has been. The whole neighborhood's power comes in through my property. I didn't think about that yet. I just made a note in my notebook. 3 cars, 8:47 in the morning, no permission given. And I picked up the phone to call Claire. Claire is my property attorney. She is the kind of person who speaks in complete sentences and charges by the hour, and is absolutely worth every single cent. I told her what I was looking at. I heard her go quiet on the other end of the line, the particular quiet she does when she's already thinking 3 steps ahead. "Don't move anyone," she said. "Don't make contact. Just document everything." "I've already started," I said. "Of course you have." A pause. "Who filed the community map change?" "Karen Hollis." Another pause. Then, very calmly, "Pull her filing date and send it to me." I did. And when I found it, something interesting appeared that I wasn't expecting at all. The filing had been submitted 6 weeks ago, but the date stamp on the county approval was blank. The map change had never been officially approved. Not by the county. Not by anyone with actual authority. Karen had put a parking lot on my land using a document that wasn't even legal yet. I closed my laptop and looked back out at the field. 5 cars now. A 6th was slowing down on the road outside, the driver peering in through my open gate. I picked up my camera. I was back on my farm within 48 hours. Raymond told me to go. He said it in that quiet, firm way he had, the same tone he used when we were kids, and he'd already made a decision for both of us. "Go fix your land," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." I squeezed his hand, grabbed my folder from the safe, and drove straight from the airport to Patricia's office without stopping at the house. Patricia had a lot more to tell me in person than she had on the phone. She spread 3 documents across her desk. The first was the HOA's development application, 12 pages, stamped and signed by the county planning office. The second was a site map. And the third was something that made me grip the edge of her desk to keep my hands steady. It was a boundary declaration, filed by the HOA 6 weeks before I left for Raymond's, quietly buried in the county clerk's office under a routine administrative submission. The declaration stated that the 2.4 acres along my western fence line had been historically maintained and utilized by the Sycamore County HOA, and were therefore subject to a claim of adverse possession. Adverse possession. That's a legal term that basically means if someone uses your land openly, continuously, and without your permission for a long enough period of time, they can eventually claim it as their own. Karen hadn't just taken my land. She had been building a paper trail for years to make it look like the land was never really mine to begin with. I asked Patricia how long they had been preparing this. She looked at me carefully before she answered. "At least 2 years," she said. "Ma, possibly longer." I sat back in my chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment. 2 years. While I was filing noise complaints about Karen's board meetings and arguing about fence colors and gravel placement, she had been running a completely different game underneath all of it. The violations, the photos, the little bureaucratic harassments, they weren't about the fence or the gravel or the barn door. They were about keeping me distracted. That was the part that stung the most. Not the land, the patience of it. Patricia told me the adverse possession claim was weak, genuinely weak. My deed was clear, my survey was registered, and I had documentation going back 22 years showing continuous ownership and active agricultural use of that parcel. No court was going to hand 2.4 acres of actively farmed land to a homeowners association based on a quietly filed declaration. But here was the problem. The hotel was already under construction. I drove out to the western edge of my property that afternoon. What I saw stopped me cold at the fence line. The foundation was already poured. A concrete slab, flat and pale gray in the afternoon light, sitting squarely on what I knew, what every survey map I had ever seen confirmed, was my land. There were construction vehicles parked along the access road. There were workers. There was a sign posted near the site entrance that read, Sycamore Grand, a community development project, with the HOA's logo in the corner and a projected completion date of the following spring. A hotel. They had actually poured the foundation for a hotel. I took photos of everything. I measured the distance from the concrete slab to my fence post. I noted the position of the construction equipment. I wrote down the name of the construction company printed on the side of one of the trucks, Redline Build Group, and I sent all of it to Patricia before I pulled out of the access road. That evening, Karen Whitfield knocked on my door. I want to be clear about something. I did not expect her to come to me. I had expected lawyers, or maybe silence, or another round of formal letters. I had not expected her to walk up my porch steps with a casserole dish covered in aluminum foil and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I heard you were back," she said. "I wanted to welcome you home." I looked at the casserole. I looked at her. "Karen," I said, "you filed an adverse possession claim on my property." She tilted her head slightly, like the sentence confused her. "The HOA has been maintaining that corridor for years," she said. "It's always been a gray area." "It has never been a gray area," I said. "My name is on the deed. It has always been on the deed." She shifted her weight and smiled again, softer this time, the kind of smile that was meant to make me feel like I was being unreasonable. "We're building something that benefits the whole community," she said. "The hotel will bring revenue. It'll fund the HOA's programs. It'll raise property values. I'd have thought you'd want to be part of that." "You built it on my land," I said, "without my knowledge, while I was away caring for my brother." Something flickered behind her eyes then. Not guilt. Something colder than that. She set the casserole down on the porch railing, tucked her hands together in front of her, and said, "I think when the county finishes reviewing everything, you'll find that the boundary question is more complicated than you remember." Then she turned and walked back down my steps. I stood there holding the door open, watching her cross the street. And I thought about something Patricia had told me earlier that day. That the county planning office had a 30-day window for a formal objection to be filed before the development permit became permanent. Patricia had also told me she'd already found something in the HOA's application. Something small. Something they probably thought no one would look for. I went inside, opened my folder, and started reading again. Whatever Karen thought she had built, I was about to find the crack in it. There was a mistake on page 7. I almost missed it. It was buried in the middle of a dense paragraph of legal language in the HOA's development application. The kind of paragraph most people skip because it looks like filler. But Patricia had circled it in red ink. And once I saw what she was pointing at, I couldn't believe Karen's team had let it through. The application listed the parcel's tax ID number as 4471-B. My parcel, the one I had owned and farmed for 22 years, was registered under tax ID 4417-B. 2 digits transposed. A small error. The kind of thing that happens when someone is moving fast and confident and doesn't double-check their own paperwork. The problem for Karen was that 4471-B was not my land. It was a county drainage easement, which meant the HOA had submitted a development application, obtained a construction permit, and poured a concrete foundation, all on a parcel that wasn't mine, wasn't theirs, and wasn't legally available for any private development under any circumstances. They hadn't just taken my land. They had also, without realizing it, filed fraudulent documentation with a county agency. I called Patricia at 7 in the morning. She picked up before the second ring. "You found it," she said. "How did they miss this?" I asked. "Because Karen assumed no one would look," Patricia said. "That's the mistake people make when they've been getting away with things for a long time. They stop checking." We filed the formal objection that same day, 31 pages, with attachments. Patricia had spent the previous 2 days building it out. It included my original deed, my registered survey from the county assessor's office, aerial photographs showing active agricultural use of the parcel going back 15 years, the camera footage from my fence post showing the survey crew on the access road, and a detailed breakdown of the tax ID discrepancy with supporting documentation from the county records office. We also filed a separate complaint with the county's Code Enforcement Division about the drainage easement violation. Then, we waited. Waiting is its own kind of hard. I kept busy the way I always had, checking the irrigation lines, walking the crop rows, talking to Gerald, who had come back around once he saw I was home and wasn't angry at him. Gerald wasn't a complicated man. He had stayed quiet because someone had told him to, and I had a good idea who that someone was. He didn't say it directly. He didn't have to. "She came by twice while you were gone," he told me one morning, leaning against the fence post near the equipment barn. "Asked me questions about whether you'd been in contact, whether you were coming back soon, whether you had anyone else looking after the property." "What did you tell her?" I asked. "Told her I didn't know much," he said. "Which was mostly true." I nodded. Mostly true was probably the kindest version of what Gerald could offer, and I didn't push him further. He was a neighbor, not an ally, and there was a difference. 4 days after we filed, I got a call from a reporter. Her name was Dana Reyes, and she worked for the Sycamore Valley Courier, a small local paper that most people in the county read on their phones while waiting for their coffee. She said she'd received a tip about a land dispute involving a local HOA and a construction project, and she wanted to hear my side. I had not sent that tip. I still don't know who did. I called Patricia before I called Dana back. Patricia told me to be careful, to stick to facts, and to share nothing that wasn't already in the public record. She also said, and this was the part I held on to, that public attention on a case like this tended to make county officials move faster. Bureaucracies, she said, did not like being watched. I called Dana back that afternoon. I told her everything that was in the public record. I told her about the deed, the survey, the tax ID error, the foundation on the drainage easement. I told her that a construction crew had broken ground on 2.4 acres of my farmland while I was caring for a sick family member, and that I had not been notified, contacted, or consulted at any point. I told her I had filed a formal objection and a code enforcement complaint, and that both were currently under review. Dana asked me if Karen Whitfield had reached out to me directly. I told her about the casserole. Dana went very quiet for a moment. Then she said, "She brought you a casserole?" "She set it on the porch railing," I said. "I still don't know what was in it." The article ran 2 days later. Dana had done her homework. She'd pulled the application from the county records office herself, confirmed the tax ID discrepancy, and reached out to a county planning official for comment. The official's response was a single sentence: "The matter is currently under internal review." Karen's response, printed near the bottom of the article, was longer. She described the development as a vital community investment and said the boundary question was being handled through proper legal channels. She said the HOA had followed every required procedure. She said the project would bring real value to every resident of Sycamore County. She did not mention the drainage easement. She did not mention the tax ID. She did not mention that the county had received a 31-page objection with 15 attachments. What she didn't know, what I hadn't told anyone except Patricia, was that the objection was only the first filing. Because buried in the county's HOA registration documents, I had found something else entirely. Something that had nothing to do with my fence line, or my parcel number, or even the hotel. Something that called into question whether the Sycamore County HOA had the legal authority to file anything at all.